What's going on, everybody? My name is Tamar Turner, and I'm the host of the Down to Business podcast, where the mission is to really provide exposure to businesses, entrepreneurs, and artists all around the world in their respective crafts. And we do so through audio and visual interviews where we come on and we talk about all things from getting into the business to most memorable moments to even some advice that you may give for other business owners and entrepreneurs out there. So if this sounds like something that you would be interested in, we'd love to have you on for an interview. Please be sure to reach out via any social media platform and we'll definitely get back to you. But until then, enjoy this episode. What's going on, everybody? It's Tamar Turner here. Welcome you back to another episode of the Down to Business podcast. And as I kind of spoke about on my last episode, and something that you'll probably even hear me reference a lot in incoming episodes, just because I was able to make a lot of connections here, a lot of good people speak and drop some value, is that, look, if you're somebody who is a business owner, is an entrepreneur, thinking about, just you have a different craft or anything like that, or just different interests and hobbies that you have, I really would advise you to, make that transition, get on over to Clubhouse, because it's really just a great way to network, to connect. I was somebody who, coming in, I was a little skeptical about it. Like, I can't even lie to you guys. It was something where I didn't really know. And the stuff that I was seeing getting posted and the connotation that was giving me, it was just something where I kind of wanted to stay away from. But after just some conversations, just from, hearing that perspective and everything, it's been an app that's really, I've been able to utilize it. It's been beautiful. And just how miraculously and how fast that it works. And just the people that you meet, just the talent that you're able to kind of get and the value, just the gems that people drop for free. So just wanted to kind of drop that gem on you guys. Definitely something to look into. And I can definitely talk to anybody more about it. But that kind of leads me into our guest today. So I'm sitting down with Hugo V, somebody who I was able to, join. We joined a room simultaneously, and then just in kind of waiting on our turns and just in kind of giving some feedback in the conversation, we were able to hear one another speak and then instantly connected kind of off the app. And now here we are today. So definitely very excited to be sitting down with him today. And I think he's about to provide you guys with a lot of value. So Hugo, how you doing today?
Doing excellent.
Good. And so for everybody out there, for everybody who kind of might be tuning in, who might know a little bit about your background, some of the people kind of on my end who may not know anything about you, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and what brings you on the podcast today?
Sure. Hugo V. I grew up in Houston, Texas. I was born in New York City, but I grew up in Houston, Texas. But my story begins with my parents. My parents are immigrants from Bolivia. So they came in the 60s, where my brother and I were born in New York City. And my dad was always a big dreamer. And, he had worked for some companies, but when he finally was able to, he became an entrepreneur. So I was able to kind of get that entrepreneur bug early on and kind of see how it went. Now, my father's first business, just like a lot of businesses, went for a while and he went bankrupt. So we had to go through personal and business bankruptcy, which was an eye-opener because it affected the whole family. I went to Strike Jesuit here in Houston, went to UT Austin, then later on came back and started working. My dad had a couple different clients because he was now working with another company trying to get out of bankruptcy. And so I was just working a couple clients. I got out with an accounting degree and came back from college. I was living at home and I was trying to figure out, okay, do I want to work for a company? Maybe I'll just work, as I'm looking for a job. That was the whole thing. I'm looking for a job, but I got to start working some type of hustle, try to make some type of money. And then little by little, the clients, started getting more and more orders. I got a couple other clients. And so then after 3 years of doing that, was able to get out of my parents' house, open up an office, and really start this business. And then a few years later, my dad left the company and came to work with me, and we ended up working together in this family. It was a family business for 20 years until he passed. And what we mainly did was, at the beginning, we were more of a middleman for industrial products. And then I saw that needed to get into distribution to get a better gross margin. So that's what we did. We started trying to get a few different lines, some flow meters made in RCM flow meters made in California, and then also found this industrial chalk made in Poland for the windshield industry, some other types of fittings made in Texas. And so that's kind of how it all began. And so that's how I first started to kind of realize is that if you really want to make something and have that American dream, because that's what my father believed in, that no matter who you are, the obstacles may be bigger for some than others, but it is possible. And I've noticed, as times change, it is possible, and certain things are harder now than before. Certain things are easier than before.
Got you for sure. And it's, I would definitely say that that was a great point to end on, that just things change. And it's something that, it can be tough to adapt to. It can be tough to even accept change. It's just a hard thing, whether it comes in business, whether it comes, just any form of life, education, different things like that. But I definitely do love to hear the journey. My condolences and prayers to your dad, to your family and everything like that. But I love the fact that, because it's not many, I wouldn't say I don't bring many business owners on here who are in like a family business, but I would say that a lot of people kind of who I bring on here, they more so kind of speak from their personal journey. They're just kind of getting it from the ground up type thing. One of those things where they kind of just started it on their own and may just get support from friends and family, but it's not necessarily something that they do. So when your dad originally left his company to come work with you, to come, you guys are in business together, what was really that feeling like? What was your mindset kind of going into that?
Well, my mindset is I needed some help. It's like, there was a lot of work, and you needed someone to trust. So when I traveled to see the clients, or he traveled to see the clients, and most of our clients were either in the U.S. or in Latin America. So obviously, both of us being bilingual, you knew that the office back home was being covered, and you didn't have to explain things or leave a lot of different notes. So it just made it easier. I was able to do more. And then obviously with someone that you didn't really have to bring up to speed, because he already knew the business from before. So that's what made it easier. And then, it just kind of also kind of changed our relationship. And there's other things that kind of changed our relationship. But then, one thing is just being father son, but another thing is, being business partners and just trying to make some money.
Definitely. I'm big on, like you said, I just needed some help. Sometimes that's really just what it can start from, what it can stem from, what it really boils down to. So most definitely, it's always good to just hear that, people are able to adapt, to grow, to learn an environment. But it's even kind of more surreal, more bittersweet when it can come from the form of a family, from the form of somebody that's really close to you, none other than, your father. So just in thinking about what you said, and just in thinking about the business that you ran and what you really did, how would you say, kind of looking back when you kind of first got into business, because you spoke about change and everything. So how were things kind of when you first got into business and what you were trying to do, whether it came to like the manufacturing and the parts in different places and just getting new clients? As you look at that back then and as you look at that now, what would you say has been the biggest adjustment in this industry? What would you say even the biggest adjustment that you had to make, to kind of adapt with the times, to be able to keep up and still, produce?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that you stay consistent with who you are, because from the beginning, our biggest customers has changed over the last almost 30 years. So you're kind of like your bread and butter, or the companies that you would, really depend on to generate a lot of revenue, has not been the same. It's just like anybody who comes up with a business plan and shows you a sales forecast. Well, this is how much we made in year one, so we're going to make this much more in year 2 and 3, as though there's never going to be any type of obstacles to come before you. So our biggest customers have always changed, and so you always have in my opinion, to do two things: always communicate to the customer and always deliver. You always want to make sure that you deliver, because that was the one thing, even though when we were a middleman and, we would charge more than you could probably get if they went direct. Now, they had their reasons to go to us because they didn't want to have a bunch of different suppliers, but they could rely on us and trust us. I mean, that to me is the most important thing. If your clients, as well as even personal relationships, if someone trusts you, they're more willing to either do business with you or fall in love with you. I mean, that's almost like a given. So I think you have to always be building trust, and your customers will change. There is not any customer that's going to maintain the same level of activity. Sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down. Sometimes something happens to them, something happens to us. So to me, is always be true to yourself and knowing what you want to do. And I learned this on later on. So after about 13 years, I went back and did an executive MBA at Rice University. And, one of the things when we were doing corporate strategy, we were talking about, you want to have a mission statement, you want to have a vision statement, but you also want to have company values. And I always said one of my values is treat customers as family. It's almost going back to the golden rule, treat others how you want to be treated. Well, if I want to do business with you, I want to make sure that everything is done correctly and fairly, where we both win. And I think a lot of times people think that, I just got to be a hard negotiator and get the most out of it. It's not one deal. I got to think about the second deal, the third deal, the 10th deal, the 100th deal. So if someone feels like I'm always kind of putting the screws to them, it leaves a bad taste in their mouth. And you never want to do that in any type of relationship. You always want to make sure that people feel like they're getting something of value. And so I think that's always key to, to trust and the value and to communicate. And then you're going to change. Like we had different products, so some of our products have changed over the years. So we've kind of then focused more on other customers. So you kind of go sometimes where the money is, or where you think, or kind of like what you want to do. So I think those are, to me, the most important things, because and we saw in 2020 that the pandemic caused a lot of businesses to have a really big hit to their balance sheet and their income statement. There's a few companies that obviously made a lot of money, but for the most part, everyone, had to kind of relook at business. And so things are changing. Things are going to continue to change here in 2021 and beyond. The whole thing is what is the new workplace? And what is considered a business where you have to do things face to face, where some things you can do more remote. And, then you see a lot more people getting into entrepreneurship, which is beautiful. And you see that on Clubhouse. You see that just in general, because a lot of jobs disappeared. So everyone is trying to look at, what can I do? And so I think that's the key thing, is you got to know who you are as well as, what you want to do.
Man, that was from start to finish. That was just couldn't be more than true. Just from in thinking about customers, how you approach them, how you want to think about longevity. That's really what you made me think about when you described that. Not thinking about just that first deal, not thinking about just that first contract, that first sale, that first whatever it may be, that first episode even for my podcast. So it's just like you have to think about later on down the line, the goals that you set for yourself, the taste that you leave in the customer's mouth. Never want them to feel like they're on the back burner. They were cheated, that your values weren't upheld, that what you really said, whether it be in your mission statement on your website or just to them even face to face, that wasn't fully carried through. I think that can definitely affect relationships matter, especially when it comes to business. It's not all money. And I think that once people realize that, once everybody realizes that, even the bigger corporations, that it's more so, you gotta think about those morals and those values too, that these are people just the same. So I really think that that's important. And then also kind of what you touched on as well, just in thinking about that, still that constant everlasting idea of change, just adapting, just with the times and everything like that. But something you also talked about too that stood out to me, you mentioned the word obstacles. And that's something that I'm big on, just because I feel like that obstacles are definitely like teaching points, that they're something that we want to avoid them bad, or we're even taught to avoid them, whether it just be in video games and different things like that. You don't want to kind of go into barriers or different things like that. But sometimes you have to embrace that, because it's truly about growing. And I think that it takes kind of those trials and those tribulations, those failures to, really grow, really learn. So what was an obstacle, or maybe even obstacles for you, that, kind of really adjusted the way you approach your business, whether or not? I won't even really just hone it down just to business. You could even just say life. So what was maybe something that you kind of just went through, or what was something that you've really just experienced that, really just changed your outlook on things?
Well, I think the main thing is as each year in life, either hopefully you're getting more knowledge and you're kind of dealing with kind of different things. And so almost like different things kind of present themselves in all types of relationships. To me, it was always looking at what possibly could go wrong. So one thing you kind of learn in business school is you do the kind of what they call the SWOT paradigm. You put out your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats. Something can always change. A lot of times we say, well, I know I'm going to make a lot of money because I'm really good at it. Yeah, but there's also somebody down the street that might be very good at it. So then you kind of have to understand, okay, what is your value proposition? You got to figure out what are the possible opportunities, but also what are the possible threats. So there was like two things to answer your question is I was always kind of looking ahead. And I think you always kind of have to be prepared to, look in, do what you need to do today, this year, but also kind of try to almost look at business like a chess game. What are the moves further down the line? You always got to be thinking about there's other moves. And that was one of the reasons after 13 years, even though things were really going good there in the 90s, it said, well, I don't know how things will go. My dad was obviously getting older. I was obviously looking at doing different things. So that's why I went back and I got more education. You have to be a perpetual learner. So that's why I went back and get the MBA, not only to get the business acumen, but also to interact with a lot of quality professors and then other quality students that were doing different things, coming, also working at other corporations, and then going to school every other weekend, Friday, all day Saturday. And to also to constantly look inward of what really works for me. So I did know, and I also think, we always have interests. I was talking to an uncle of mine a couple of years ago, and he was saying, like, when he was in college, he majored in this, but then when he had turned 30, he probably would have majored in something else. But when he turned 50, he would have probably majored in something else. And it caused me to think, if I would have gone back to college now, instead of going into pharmacy and then later on getting out of pharmacy and going into business and accounting, I probably would have focused more on economics and art history. If I wanted to just get a degree, but then also develop the other skills that I needed, which was to develop my public speaking and to become more and more fluent in Spanish. Because, to me, every job has some form of sales in it. So we always got to be a salesman, and how good of a salesman are you? So then I've come back now and I say, well, my two biggest loves in terms of kind of business have always liked the whole idea of supply chain. And that's what I like about my current company, Unitex Global, which is about kind of supply chain, taking a product from the manufacturer, eventually getting it to the manufacturing plant, and then, of course, getting paid. But then I also had a big love for public speaking. So then I started a second company, Life is Wonderful, which now I can incorporate in motivational speaking as well as writing books, coming out with an online course and a podcast to try to get the information about recovery, because I've gone through addiction into recovery. I've been over 20 years clean. So now it's just almost intertwining something that is very personal, where I could actually be very helpful because I have the ability to explain things well, get on stage, write. And so people can recover, heal, and really look inward. So the tagline for the company is empowering people through self-awareness. Well, we need self-awareness in any type of life, business, relationships, or personal lives, is like where we are, where's my partner, how are they reacting, where are my relationships with my family, my friends, who am I around? So you're talking about, so go back to your original question, obstacles is, I would always say is almost be a sponge. Think of life as a perpetual learner, because we can learn about anything, whether it's about how to become more mechanical, how to be better in the kitchen, how to be better at love, how to be better at just discovering ourselves, but also being better at business, whether it's sales, whether it's, the financial aspect of it, keeping the books, making sure, doing everything right, as, well as marketing, and any other, or if you're doing a service, how good is your service? Are you on top of things and constantly looking at ways to improve?
I want to first and foremost say, commend you for, 20 plus years of being clean, and not only just you, but all of the recovering and clean addicts out there and everything like that. I
We
do think that
appreciate it.
absolutely, absolutely. And I also want to commend you for what you're doing, for just you beat me to it, man. I was just getting ready to transition into, Life is Wonderful, just because I definitely wanted to, really get that entity out there, and really just in hearing you speak about it on Clubhouse, and then really just going through the website, just watching some of the videos, even going through your page and just seeing what you do, seeing how, you're, to me, I think you're giving back to the community, to those out there, just really just being an anchor, a light for those sometimes who feel like there's no end to the tunnel, or some people, who just need to stay afloat a little bit. So I really do commend you just for that service that you're offering to people. And I definitely do encourage a lot of people out there to check it out, to not only check out the lifeiswonderful.love page, but also the lifeiswonderful.love website. And I know Hugo has a lot more coming, and I know he's done a lot already, just do public speaking, just do the motivation and everything. But my question for you, just in thinking about what you do, just in hearing about what you do, and even just in able to see it for myself, what would you say? Well, I would even rephrase it. At what point in your, whether it be your career, your life, however we kind of want to call it, did you say, okay, this is really what I want to do? This is what I've gone through in life. I want other people, to be able to share their story, but be able to know that, look, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. There will be better days. You can, kind of overcome this. At what point did you really say, hey, Hugo, it's time to start this. Let's make it happen?
Well, I'll answer it in two ways. The first part is when I hit 30 and I was looking at my life and I was still drinking and gambling way too much. and then thinking I got to do something different. And so I looked around, and I had at that time a girlfriend who said, "Oh, I think your family drinks too much." And of course, got very defensive. "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about." But I would go home, and it was almost like that little voice in the back of your head going, "Is she being a bitch, or does she really have something there? Does she see something that maybe I have blinders on?" So I would think about it. Then, of course, if you actually go through my first introductory video, I go through the whole story. But I came to the realization, after you get a certain amount of rejection and frustration, you're almost motivated, because I'm the believer is the greatest motivator is pain. There is not a greater teacher than pain. And that could be financial pain, physical pain, emotional pain, spiritual pain. But it's going to be some time of pain that really is almost the really catapults us to really almost extreme change. And so that was the whole thing, to start asking for help. And I can go through, we're not really focused on this podcast, but there are so many things out there that sometimes society tells us you need to figure all this out yourself. And that is such a false narrative, because no one has all the answers. So you do need to ask for help. And it's actually a sign of strength to ask for help. And actually the smartest, richer, the people that are most content with their lives are the people who ask for help, whatever the guidance is, because there's all, we need help, we have so many different areas in our lives that we need to kind of address, that we cannot spend all the time in a library or on Google trying to get educated. So we have to kind of rely on people. Now, sometimes the teachers we pick may not be the most astute, but then we can change teachers or kind of change subjects. So then the second part of that is how did I turn this into a business? It's almost like I finally get this epiphany. And I'm a big believer in epiphanies, because I think I did have an epiphany when I decided to really get clean and try to really have better relationships. Because the whole reason to get into recovery was not to stop the drinking or the gambling. The whole reason to get into recovery was to actually understand myself better, to discover who was Hugo, what is he about, heal all the pain and all those secrets that I was so afraid that somebody would find out. So then that was like one epiphany. And then there was another epiphany that would kind of came at a retreat. So I was at this retreat for gambling, and the person who was supposed to kind of wrap up the retreat, somehow something happened. And then the person who was actually directing the retreat asked me, "Hey, do you want to kind of step in and do this?" So I went back to my room, and this was going to be, so he tells me this Saturday night. And then, the wrap up was like Sunday morning. So I didn't have a lot of time to understand, to kind of think about what type of impact did I want to make with the overview or the closing statements. And so then all of a sudden it just kind of came to me, well, I'm just going to rewrite the 12 steps of recovery into something more concise. So instead of like doing the whole first step, we are powerless, and then it becomes, how your life's become unmanageable, I changed it to we believed a lie. And I kept doing that with all the 12 steps. And then I said, well, then later on, it came on. It's like, well, this is actually something that could be really beneficial to other addicts who, because so many people come in, go out, or they relapse after years, and saying, well, we got to get to the heart of it. Keep the original steps, but also almost give these as support. And so that was like my second epiphany, saying, okay, I've been in the program long enough. I've read a lot. I've been around. I've heard the stories. The most important thing was to listen to people. And I think that's the key, to listen to how people have really recovered in pain and how they really then become this miracle, the miracle of life. And so it just became something that became like it became more than an idea. It's almost like it was a God-given purpose. And then I said, well, okay, I'm just going to first do a few videos on YouTube. And then it became as well. I had an assistant. She helped me out came up with a logo. And then I came up with a tagline. Then I hired someone to do a website. Then I started getting on Instagram. Then, of course, saying a few things on LinkedIn. And then, of course, with Clubhouse, just keeping growing. And then obviously more in the business, realizing, well, if I want to speak, it's better also to have some books. And then when I was kind of pushing the business, I realized, well, besides having a books, it's probably good to have a course. And it's also good to have a podcast. So it's almost like it almost keeps growing and growing and growing into different areas, which makes it sometimes overwhelming. But then at other times you're saying, well, I'd rather be busy than not busy. So that kind of answers the question, is how it all came about. Is sometimes you almost have to sit back and let the answers come to you. It's almost like if you're in just quiet time or in meditation. I think it's always good for people to journal, for people to spend some time just thinking, because you can't really do anything without a plan. And so you have to do some writing, whether it's an exact business plan or marketing plan, or maybe it's just jotting down some notes. I mean, there's plenty of people who started a business by just writing down some notes on a cocktail napkin. And those are beautiful stories.
Beautiful stories indeed, and definitely a beautiful message when you really just, take the time to sit back, to listen, to be in tune, to sometimes not even speak. Sometimes just clear your mind, clear your head. It's amazing what can come from that, what can even come to you. The motivations, the ideas, the everything. Because I know a lot of times, even just speaking for myself, my mind is everywhere, just running, just thinking about this, thinking about that, but still having to go about my day, still having to be at work, still having to, do things for the podcast, edit, social time, whatever the case may be, communicate, interact, whatever I may do. But sometimes when you really just, take that time to just take some time to just relax, to just chill, to just really almost do nothing in a sense. It's amazing kind of how you can really just be in tune with everything. It almost feels like I'm addressing each thought at a time, kind of just cycling through, going through different things like that. So it's amazing. I really think sometimes, like you said, those are really some of the best stories. Those things that happen where you were unexpected, just being in your basement, just jotting some things down, just being at a bar or restaurant and writing something down, like you said, on the napkin, coming back to it later, just manifestations. It's all real, and energy and everything like that. So it's really just amazing. Again, with you, I'm going to say it time and time again, but really just the journey behind all of this, really how you guys started, what you had to go through in life, what you really had to kind of tell yourself to go through, to grow through, to really, even pray about, just reflect on, and really just make some changes. But I really think that it takes a lot for somebody to, admit to something, to accept something, and then to want to change that, to want to be better, to want to do better, to want better for themselves. So I really encourage everybody out there listening, whether you may know Hugo personally or this is kind of your first time just being able to hear from him, definitely tap in, to the website, to the content that he has. I know that he has a lot more gems coming, and definitely even listen to him speak on Clubhouse. Like I said, that was the first place that I was able to get acquainted from, and I really don't regret it one bit. And really just after hearing everything that you came on here and shared with us today, it's really just amazing. I'm definitely tapped in with you moving forward. I definitely am looking forward to all of the content that's to come, and just the messages behind it, the lives that you impact, that you change. Is going to be immense. It's really just going to be immense. So before we kind of wrap things up, for everybody kind of listening out there, do you feel like there's anything about Life is Wonderful, about what you kind of did to come into business, just about anything that you feel like we haven't touched on today that you would like to get into?
Well, at first, I'd like to have a shout out to how we met, because I think that's very important, because now a lot of more and more people each day come in the Clubhouse. Now, I got into Clubhouse, I think it was December 30th, 2020. So I've been on it just about 1 month. But we were in the room with Kenny the Plug. So I have to, with so many different rooms and different ones about marketing or networking, I have to give a shout out to the room that allowed us to meet, where we could actually have this conversation and share business ideas on how we can all kind of learn from each other. So that's first and foremost. Second of all, the main thing to me is about whether it's Life is Wonderful or Unitex Global, is that for anybody starting a business, and hearing a lot of people either on Clubhouse or just like I know from my own business school, or from people that I know just out and about here in Houston, Texas, is that, a lot of people, want to start a business for a variety of reasons. And a lot of them have good ideas. And, that all businesses can make money. So whatever your idea is, I just want to encourage, I'm always a person who believes the glass is always half full. So whatever your idea is, it can make money. The other thing is that there is a lot of different aspects to running a business, whether it's sales, whether it's marketing, whether it's an actual product or service, whether it's, making sure you collect the money, whether it's online, whether it's a physical store, whether you're dealing with inventory or how big of a workforce, and you're dealing with employees, or you're dealing with manufacturers, or you're dealing with drop shipping. There's so many different areas to it, is that you have to learn And that's where, writing down a plan before you just automatically just go from idea to opening the door, write down those things, that is so important. Those, to me, is probably one of the greatest strengths of that a lot of people spend money on NBA, but, you can learn it just by going to Google, is write down all your strengths, but also be honest with yourself and write down your weaknesses and what you're weak at, get the help. And then understand what are the possible opportunities. How big can this grow? Because like I said, I just started with just a few videos on YouTube, and now I'm dealing with books, courses, podcasts, more videos, speaking, mentoring. It just keeps, it can grow. So there's so many opportunities, but there's also threats. Like as we notice, just one small thing is like the pandemic, but there's so many other threats depending on where you live. So just be open that even though a business can make money, there's also a possibility that a business can fail. But I'm a big believer that it usually comes with planning. And I actually have this on my IG, and it's a famous quote. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And so I'm a big believer is you got to write certain things down and then almost kind of talk to somebody else and say, okay, what do you think about this? It's okay to ask, for some advice. Now, of course, anytime anybody you ask, sometimes people will be supportive and sometimes they're going to be unsupportive. And I'm talking about family or friends, people that, that you kind of trust. And then you don't want to get deflated. You ask different people, what about this idea? But also, you got to trust your gut. So understand that, there's so many different beautiful things about business. And it can also, give you a lot of different more freedom. And that's the beauty of being an entrepreneur. You're allowed a certain amount of freedom, or if you're doing it as a side business, side hustle, still working another job until, you really understand how much money is coming in per month or how much money you really need, because each of us needs different amounts of money per month. And we just got to know what that number is and what would actually provide us the lifestyle we want. And so I think those are the really key things is I think we're going to see a lot of different businesses and really the different ways the way businesses are going to be either managed or delivered here in 2021, because we're still going to be dealing with the virus, vaccinations, how much contact there is, what type of deliverables, how much stuff is online, how much stuff is actually face to face. So there's so many still unknowns out there. And so I would just encourage people to, you almost get your hustle on, you grind, but also just, be open to ask those good, hard questions and try to keep pushing yourself to learn and to hustle.
If you guys couldn't tell, ladies and gentlemen, he's a motivational speaker. Like, man, that just put, from the time I hit play on this recording, you really just put so many gems, almost lit a fire under me. Truly, really just kind of made me do some reflection, really made me even take some of the principles that I have and I kind of want to really hone in on those, focus in on those, and really just think about longevity, not just kind of think about, obviously, yeah, definitely do want to live in a moment, definitely do want to appreciate everything that we have going on, but also just think about what's to come, the future and everything like that. So I really do love everything that you said, really from start to finish. Love I feel like we haven't even touched every single bit of it, but love just the story that we were able to hear, the journey that we were able to go through with Hugo V today. And it's really just amazing just to once again really see the value that you're not only giving back to people, but the value that you were able to just give here today, and the value that you want to, continue to give and continue to serve and impact people. Like you said, we're really just almost felt like you said a couple of YouTube videos and everything, and now look at really where you are. And if that doesn't really speak to anybody out there, it's really just to let you know that anything is possible. Truly, Kevin Garnett, I think, really said it best. He said it a lot differently than that, but it's really just anything can happen. Truly, if you really just kind of hone it, some things aren't meant to happen. So you also do have to understand and accept that too. But with work towards something, with dedication, with consistency, with time, with patience, anything is truly possible. And I think Hugo really exemplified that here today. And I really, like I said, I really encourage, really encourage everybody to just tap in with his page. And I'll make sure that once this episode is published up and everything like that, that people are able to get the bio and everything and the websites and the social medias, because I think that he can definitely speak to somebody out there. He can definitely, resonate with somebody. If you're having just a tough day, just need a little pick me up, or maybe just need something. Maybe you're just feeling good and really just need that extra motivation, just that extra fire under you. I think he can really do that for you as well. So Hugo, just for the people out there, like I said, the ones who may be familiar with you, who may not be familiar with you, can you also tell them where they can kind of tap in with you on your website, of social media and everything like that, if they wanted to reach out and connect?
Thanks. The company is Life is Wonderful. But if you remember, lifeiswonderful.love, that is the website and also the Instagram. So life is wonderful. And that's LOVE, the whole word. And Life is Wonderful is spelled out all together. That's how you would get into my website, which actually will host everything. So the website is really like home base for everything. If you just go to the website, that'll the easiest way. And Instagram, I have almost most of the videos. There's a few in the beginning that just were not just saved. So they got onto YouTube, but they're not on Instagram. But most of them are, especially the later ones, like where I talk about anxiety or gratitude and some of these other newer topics. And then the channel on YouTube is Life is Wonderful. The only problem is in YouTube, Life is Wonderful is also a song by this singer, Jason Gertz. And so I'm still far down on the YouTube if you just type in Life is Wonderful. So it takes a long while. So I always say, you really need to listen to the videos. Just go to Instagram or to my website. You'll find it a lot faster. And the website ties into my YouTube. So when you click on the video, that will actually open up YouTube. And that's the best way to get all the information. And then once these books are finished, that the easiest way to do is go to the website. So once you just know that website, that's the easiest way to get in contact with me. Call me, email me, anything that you need, because I'm always here. One thing's about business, but it's also about the human contact. I'm also big on relationships, because that is actually the other piece of recovery and of life is relationships. Now we have all types of relationships, but that is what we're always striving to improve on. How intimate, how trusting, and obviously you need to set boundaries depending on what type of relationship it is, but you move forward. And that way when people meet you, the one thing that they should be able to say is, was the person authentic? And I think is once you're authentic, then you can actually make money in business, as well as have deeper connections with relationships. And I think that's what we all want. We all want deeper personal relationships. We want to have strong relationships that enable us to make money. So that's the best way to get a hold of me.
All right, folks. I strongly, strongly encourage everybody out there to find a way to connect with him, find a way to, even possibly become a part of something that he's doing, maybe a collaboration or anything like that. But as I stated, I definitely want to emphasize that I can't even let this interview without saying it again. Hugo, thank you so much, for joining us here today on the Down to Business podcast. Thank you so much for just the wonderful value, the wonderful gems that you dropped, just everything, the love that you spread, the wealth that you gave us, just that it was definitely much needed. And I'll be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to the Clubhouse Room as well, to Kenny the Plug, most definitely somebody who you guys will see. Definitely remember that name. He will be on the podcast as well very soon. So, but a big shout out to that, a big shout out to just the opportunity to be able to connect and network with like-minded individuals. It's really something that I love and truly appreciate. And I'm really looking forward to, everything that's to come later down the line, and just everything that's going on from both parties, from mine, from Life is Wonderful.love, from just what you have even going on even outside of that. So again, thank you so much for your time. To everybody out there continuously listening and supporting, I thank you. I love you. Let's keep going up. Let's keep working. This has been another episode of the Down to Business podcast, here with Tamar Turner.